Anthropic just released Claude Opus 4.6 and it achieves the highest score on Terminal Bench 2.0 out of any model. Sorry to interrupt your programming here, but it turns out GPT 5.3 Codex just came out, and that actually beats Opus 4.6 on Terminal Bench by over 10%. So it seems like Anthropic's reign was genuinely only a few minutes. The competition between these two is really heating up, so I'm super curious to see what's new in these models and find out which one feels the best to use. As lately for me, it's actually GPT 5.2 that's felt better, so I'm curious to see if Claude can claw back some of their advantage, or if OpenAI were ready with GPT 5.3 Codex. First up, a quick TLDR on what's new on these models, as we all know they're going to be better than their last versions on the benchmark, which I'll show at the end, but has anything else actually changed about the models? Well, for Opus, they're actually claiming that it can plan more carefully and sustain agentic tasks for longer, and can operate more reliably in larger code bases with better code review and debugging skills to catch its own mistakes. Now, these are actually a few of the things that I found Opus was weakest at compared to GPT 5.2. In my experience, it typically got started coding faster and usually just made a few more mistakes, whereas GPT 5.2 actually took a little longer to get coding and understood the context of the repo. So hopefully these changes do improve Opus here, and it's also probably going to be improved by its new 1 million token context window, although it is mentioned this is in beta, and similar to other providers, it will also cost you extra, with prompts exceeding 200,000 tokens costing you $10 for a million input tokens and $37.50 for a million output tokens. Moving on to Codex 5.3, OpenAI are stating that this model advances the frontier coding performance of GPT 5.2 Codex and the reasoning and professional knowledge capabilities of GPT 5.2 together in one model, which is also 25% faster. This should enable it to take on long-running tasks that involve research, tool use, and complex execution. So it really seems that they pushed this model to be a bit of an all-rounder now, with GPT 5.2 knowledge and improved coding capabilities. But all of that is just marketing speak, so let's put these models through some real-world tests. And the first one that I was trying was updating a Convex agent package to support the AI SDK v6. I've been really liking Convex as my database lately, and this package essentially just helps link the AI SDK with the database so you get really good performance, but the problem is it wasn't upgraded to the latest version. You can see here on Vercel's documentation that the migration from v5 to v6 is not an easy migration to make. They made a lot of breaking changes and changed a lot of types. So what I did was make a basic chat app in Convex that actually worked using the agent package, but then I upgraded the packages to v6 and I got a load of build and type errors, and I simply asked the models to fix them. You can see the prompt that I used here in Codex. I said I'm building a chat app with Convex and I had a working version, but then I upgraded to v6 and I need to fix the type and build errors. I passed it in the migration guide so it can use that as context if it wants, and I said I want all of the tests passing, avoid TypeScript hacks like as anywhere possible, as I often see a lot of the models do this, so I specifically wanted to say please don't, as there's quite a lot of complex types in this AI SDK. Now, since we're already on Codex, we can see how 5.3 Codex performed. It started off by understanding the repo. You can see it saw it was a mono repo with that packages/agent that we had. Then it identified a few root causes and some packages that needed to be upgraded and listed out exactly how it was going to work through this task. And after that, it just got started coding, made a few changes, would run a build every so often, and just worked on fixing all of those type errors. And overall, it actually ran for about 40 minutes completely uninterrupted, which I was super impressed with. You can see it actually added 545 lines of code and removed 111. Over in Claude Code, I gave it a copy of the exact same project and used the exact same prompt. And again, this worked through the task for around 40 minutes, and it did have a few build errors when I actually tried to start it, so I did have to send one more prompt to actually get Opus to give me a working version of the code. But again, it was a pretty similar experience to how we saw in Codex, but the one thing I must say, I do really like the Codex UI. I prefer it to a terminal UI, I'm sorry. Anyways, I can confirm after one prompt with Codex 5.3 and two prompts with Opus 4.6, they both managed to upgrade their agent package to the new version of the AI SDK with no type errors, no build errors, and all of the tests passing. But they did handle it in different ways. Now here I have Codex on the left and the changes Opus made on the right. You can actually see Opus made a few more changes to the project compared to Codex, and they actually handled a few of the features a little bit differently. One of the things that Codex did really well is it actually had this tool approval request logic here, and this was something that was new in the AI SDK v6, and I can't seem to find any mention of this in Opus. It seems like it sort of just passed it over and didn't actually sort of add it into the code. But one thing that I think Codex did really poorly was if we go over to the UI messages, it actually added in its completely own function for converting a UI message to a model message. Now, if you don't know the AI SDK, it actually just has a function to do this for you, and it should definitely use that instead. You can actually see side by side here that Opus did this correctly. It just used the convert to model messages function that comes from the AI SDK. And what this means is in the future, if they do upgrade this package, I'm not going to have to worry about making any changes to my own version here, as I should just be using the one that comes from the package. So this is a little bit of an annoying thing and a bit of a red flag to me when I was looking through this code. But to get a second opinion on my code review, I actually passed the diffs back into Codex 5.3 and asked it to do a review along with me. And you see it listed out the advantages and disadvantages of each approach here. But down at the bottom, it gave me a conclusion, and Codex 5.3 actually prefers the Opus chat version that has a better migration architecture. And if it had to pick one to better base to ship safely, it would choose Opus chat, then port over Codex chat's approval and denial handling. So that extra function we saw for the tool approval request, it says simply just take that from the Codex version and add it to the Opus version, and we have a better migration. So it's at least nice to see that Codex 5.3 isn't biased there and it didn't choose itself, but I must admit the way that both of these handled the migration was pretty similar, and I could probably prompt them to go in the right direction. But one test isn't enough, so for the next test, it's a little less serious, but I asked both of them if they could create me a Club Penguin clone using three.js. Now, I'm not going to tell you which is which, but this is the first game that we got out. You can see I have a create your penguin here, and we're actually seeing the avatar up here change. I can add on some caps here, so I've got a party hat, a propeller, a crown. I'm going to choose the propeller cap here and click play. And if you actually know anything about Club Penguin, I'd say this has done an okay job at sort of mimicking the town center that we have. Although the pizza isn't over here, there's normally a disco center here, and you can't actually go into any of these buildings. You can see none of these are solid yet. But what it did quite well is if we go to the map, we can go to different zones here. So we have the ski village. If I click and move around here, I do think my penguin looks okay for something in three.js where I gave it no assets or anything like that. It's done this all sort of from its own training. And we can actually go in and play the sled racing game here, which was my absolute favorite in Club Penguin. And there's definitely a few things missing, I must admit, but it's a pretty good first pass. It did all of this in a single prompt. I can even confirm that this version does have an attempt at the kart surfer game here, which was my favorite on Club Penguin. But this one seems a little broken. You can sort of just go from side to side, and now I think I'm under the map. And it's also really dark. Now, this is what the other model gave me, and I want you to put in the comments which model you think did a better job, and if you can work out which model made each version. I'll tell you at the end of this test. You can see in this one, we have the same color selector as that was in the prompt. We also have the hat and accessory here, so I'll choose crown this time. And we click start exploring. The penguin's a little chunkier in this version. I must say it's funnier looking, but again, I gave this no assets. This is just from scratch in three.js. It has the same problem where you can sort of walk through your buildings, but we do have the map and we have all of the different zones here. So if I go over to the ski village, I should be able to play the game. So I can play sled racing here. And to be honest, this is pretty similar to the other version of the sled racing game that we had. You can see we have some of the trees coming up in the distance here. We have 3 lives, and the life counter does actually work, but it doesn't seem like we can jump in this version. This model, though, did also give me a version of the kart surfer game, but again, this one is a little weird, although I guess it's more functional because you can actually see things in this version, and you can jump, but I'm not sure where I'm actually surfing. There is no sort of rail, and overall, yeah, it's not the kart surfer game that I remember from Club Penguin. Overall, though, I'm always impressed with what these models can do in a single prompt, especially with three.js, and if you're wondering which model did which, the first one was Opus 4.6, and the second one was Codex 5.3, and I actually think I prefer the first one, so I think Opus 4.6 wins on my Club Penguin test. Now, the final test I ran on these models was to see how good they are at UI design. Those models are getting pretty good at this, so I gave both of them a prompt to build me a landing page for an AI-only social media site, so similar to Maltbook, and the page should be snarky and emphasize it's the future and for AI only, and do this all in a single HTML file. This is the result I got back from both the prompts then, and I must admit I am very impressed with Codex here. We have Codex 5.3 on the left and Opus 4.6 on the right, and I just really like the way that Codex 5.3 went with this site. It's gone for a neo-brutalism design, and it's just a little more fun than some of the other vibe-coded sites. I think Opus 4.6 here, while being a good design, just looks like a typical vibe-coded app. It's done it very well, I must admit, but again, it's got these purple gradients, and everything about this just screams that it was vibe-coded, whereas I think the Codex 5.3 version looks like someone has had a bit more manual input, maybe prompted it to go in that direction, even though I gave them the exact same prompt. The only thing that I think Opus 4.6 did a little bit better is the page is actually a little more functional. You can see we have this sort of trending tab down here. We have rules, top models of the week, we have popular subreddits, and also a popular feed. whereas the Codex 5.3 one is a little more bare, and we sort of just have this trending tab down here, and that is it. So I'm definitely curious to see how these score on Design Arena, as they just came out, so they're not ranked yet, but at the moment GLM 4.7 is currently the leader, so I want to see if 5.3 Codex or Opus 4.6 can take that crown. Overall, both of the models are pretty capable, and it's quite hard to tell which one is going to be the best. I think personally, I'll probably lean towards 5.3 Codex, but purely because I like the Codex app and just the overall experience I've had with prompting OpenAI models. If we want to compare them on the benchmarks though, as I mentioned in the intro, Codex has a massive advantage on Terminal Bench 2.0, which is actually a pretty incredible leap, and that's basically the only benchmark that we can currently compare, as I don't think Anthropic were ready for OpenAI to release this model yet, and annoyingly, they don't use the same benchmarks in their blog posts. I did check artificial analysis, and so far they've only benchmarked Opus 4.6 for coding, but only the non-reasoning version as well. But I guess it's pretty impressive that the non-reasoning version of 4.6 actually performs as well as the reasoning version of 4.5 Opus. My personal feeling at the moment is that Opus 4.5 to 4.6 is a little more marginal than 5.2 Codex is to 5.3, but I'm going to have to use both of them and see how they feel in the real world. There's a final few extras in both of these releases, and one of the coolest ones is that both of the models apparently have improved cybersecurity capabilities, with OpenAI saying that GPT 5.3 Codex is the first model they classify as high capability for cybersecurity related tasks, and the first they've actually directly trained to identify software vulnerabilities. And Anthropic basically says the same in this long blog post. Now, one feature of Codex that I'm really expecting to like is it can actually be steered while it's working. They say instead of waiting for a final output, you can actually interact in real time, asking questions and discussing approaches and steering it toward a solution. And I just think this approach is a little bit better, as I'm always debating whether I should let the model finish first or if I should interrupt it, stop it what it's doing when I want it to make changes. And I just think, especially when we now have tasks that can run for significant lengths of time, this is going to be a much nicer user experience where we can actually talk to it while it's working. Finally, we have a few new features for Claude as well. The first one is in Claude Code, you can now use agent teams to work on tasks together, aka sub-agents. Richard actually made a video on this earlier this week, so check that out if you're interested in learning more. And there was also some cool API features, like Claude now has a compaction feature built into the API, so you can actually use that to summarize its context and perform longer running tasks. And there's also a new adaptive thinking mode, so essentially you just let the model pick up on contextual clues to see how much it should actually use its extended thinking. There we go, coding models have come a seriously long way. If you didn't know, it's actually not even been a year since Claude Code was released. Let me know what you think of all of these models in the comments. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.